It was 2:06 in the morning. The kind of hour when even the city lights looked tired, half asleep behind a curtain of rain, flickering like dying fireflies. Elena Carter stood at the edge of the Greyhound station in New Orleans, soaked to the bone, clutching her suitcase like it was the last piece of her life that hadn't fallen apart. Only, the suitcase was gone. Stolen. Sometime between dozing off on the bench and waking up with a jolt, her entire world vanished. Phone, wallet, passport, everything. She checked her jacket again. Nothing. Even the $20 bill she kept hidden in the inside lining was gone. The rain didn't let up. Not even a little. It soaked through her jeans, down into her sneakers. Her hair clung to her face, and her breath came out in shaky clouds, even though it was a Louisiana summer. But she didn't feel warm. She felt hollow, frightened, cold in a way no weather report could explain. A city she'd never been to. No one to call. No way to leave. And that's when the black SUV pulled up. Quiet. Smooth. Expensive. The passenger window lowered just enough to let warm air spill into the storm. The man behind the wheel looked like he belonged in a Forbes article. Clean suit, calm eyes, like danger didn't apply to him. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low, calm, too calm. Elena froze. Every instinct her grandmother had ever taught her screamed, "Don't trust a man in the middle of the night. Especially not one with warm eyes and cold timing." "I'm fine," she lied, arms crossed tightly. But the man didn't drive off. He looked at her like he already knew. Like this wasn't the first time he'd seen her like this. Like he'd been waiting. "I can't leave you out here," he said. Elena didn't move. But across the street, parked in the shadows, someone else was watching. A second vehicle. Engine off. Camera lens pointed. And just as Elena stepped toward the SUV, a text message was sent from that dark car. "Target has made contact. Initiate phase 2. The man's name was Nathan Graves. That much he told her. And maybe it was the warmth inside the SUV. Maybe it was the fact that the radio played soft jazz instead of something cold and digital. But Elena didn't argue when he said, "Let's get you somewhere dry." He didn't drive fast. He didn't ask personal questions. He just offered her a folded blanket from the back seat and said, "You look like you haven't eaten in hours. There's a diner a few blocks up. Best waffles in the city." Elena didn't answer right away. Her mind was still replaying the bus station like a scene from a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "Where are we headed?" she finally asked. He glanced at her from the driver's seat. "Someplace safe." The words settled into her like a stone. She should have pushed back. Demanded more. Called the cops. But with no phone, no ID, and no clue where the hell she was, there weren't many options left. They ended up at a corner diner called Lucky's. It looked like something out of the 60s. Chrome booths, neon signs, black and white tile floors. The kind of place that smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, and somehow, comfort. Over pancakes and orange juice, Elena opened up. Just a little. She told Nathan she was a nurse. She had just moved from Boston to New Orleans for a new job at a private clinic uptown. It was supposed to be the fresh start she desperately needed. Something away from the ghosts she'd left behind. Nathan nodded, never interrupting, never rushing her. Just listening. But he was careful with what he shared. Said he worked in security consulting. Said he'd been in town for a few months handling a situation. Whatever that meant. When she asked if he lived nearby, he hesitated. "My place isn't far," he said, voice measured. "If you need to lay low for a night, just until you get your stuff sorted, I've got a guest room. Locked doors. Clean sheets. Wi-Fi." Elena hesitated. Again, the alarm bells were there. But something in his tone, in the way he didn't force anything, made it feel less like an offer and more like a life raft. She followed him outside. The rain had slowed, but the clouds above still looked like trouble. And somehow, even though they'd barely met, she felt like it wasn't just the weather she needed shelter from. Nathan's house didn't look like it belonged to a man who just worked in security. It sat behind a long, gated driveway in the Garden District, a place Elena had only ever seen in travel magazines. The streets were lined with 100-year-old oaks, their limbs hanging low like they were whispering secrets to anyone who dared walk beneath them. His place was modern, minimal, quiet, glass walls, warm lighting, clean lines. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. But Elena noticed the cameras. For on the porch alone, another tucked under the eave above the garage. Motion-sensitive lights. A biometric lock on the front door. "This is secure," she said, eyebrows raised. Nathan just shrugged. Part of the job. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and leather. The kind of scent you only notice in spaces too expensive to be lived in by accident. He showed her to the guest room. Queen bed, en-suite bathroom, blackout curtains. Fresh towels. Full mini fridge. Even a phone charger, already plugged in. It was too perfect. Too ready. Still, exhaustion won. Elena took a hot shower, changed into an oversized t-shirt Nathan had given her. "You can burn it when you're done," he joked, and crawled under the softest comforter she'd ever felt. But she couldn't sleep. Something about the quiet was too loud. Around 3:45 a.m., she got up, still groggy, and tiptoed down the hall. The house was dark except for a faint blue glow coming from behind a partially closed door. Nathan's office. She shouldn't have looked. She knew that. But she did. The screen on his desk was still on. Open files. Maps. A zoomed-in satellite image of downtown New Orleans. She leaned closer. There were photos. Her photos. One from the hospital in Boston. Her in scrubs, carrying coffee. Another from a beach trip 3 summers ago with her best friend Sarah. And another. One she didn't even remember being taken. Her walking out of a CVS, hair in a bun, looking over her shoulder like someone had called her name. All time-stamped. All catalogued. And below the images, one word. Immune. Her throat tightened. Elena stepped back, bumping into the doorframe with a soft thud. She heard a shift behind her. Nathan's voice, calm but sharp. "You shouldn't be in here." She spun around, eyes wide. "Why do you have pictures of me?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The look on his face said it all. This wasn't a coincidence. He hadn't just happened to be driving past that bus station. He'd known exactly where she would be. Nathan's house was the kind of place that felt both lived in and untouched. Like someone had designed it to look inviting, but didn't actually spend much time being comfortable inside it. Tall ceilings, sleek furniture, everything either stone gray or soft oak. Clean, minimal, no clutter, no family photos, no framed degrees or travel souvenirs. The entire space gave Elena a strange feeling. Not fear exactly, but a kind of careful unease. Like she was inside a very expensive secret. Still, the exhaustion from the storm, the diner, the emotional drain of losing everything. It hit her like a freight train. She accepted the guest room without protest. She thanked him. She locked the door behind her. The bed was made with hotel-level precision. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender and something unfamiliar. Sandalwood, maybe. A mini fridge quietly hummed in the corner, fully stocked with water bottles, protein shakes, and 3 neatly labeled containers of cut fruit. There was even a toothbrush still in its plastic packaging waiting on the bathroom sink. It felt like a guest room made for someone who was never supposed to ask questions. She slept for maybe 2 hours. Restless. Tossing. Waking up in cold sweats. At 3:47 a.m., she gave up. She slipped on her socks and tiptoed barefoot across the hardwood floor. The house was completely silent. No hum of a TV left on. No music. Just the sound of her own breathing and the soft creaks of her steps. There was a room down the hall that hadn't been shown to her. The door wasn't closed all the way, and a pale blue light spilled out from the narrow gap. It looked like an office. 2 monitors glowed on a wide, walnut desk. She shouldn't have looked. She told herself that. But she did. There were files open on one screen. Maps of the city, medical reports, email strings coded with abbreviations she didn't recognize. Then she saw the photos. Her photos. Images of herself from different parts of her life. Some casual, some clearly taken without her knowing. One of her walking through Boston Common with a coffee. Another of her outside the hospital, talking to a colleague. One she'd never seen before, sitting at a bench in Logan Airport, headphones on, eyes closed. Beneath each photo was metadata. Date, time, GPS coordinates, and one more word, written in all caps. Immune. Elena's stomach turned. She backed away from the screen, her fingers trembling. And that's when she heard him. "You're not supposed to be in here," Nathan said from the doorway. His voice wasn't angry, just calm, measured. She turned slowly. Her voice cracked. "What is this? Why do you have pictures of me?" He didn't answer. He stepped forward, just enough for the hallway light to hit his face. "You weren't a coincidence, were you?" she whispered. "The bus station. The diner. You were looking for me." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Yes," he said. "But it's not what you think." Elena's breath caught in her chest. Because whatever this was, she was in it now, and she wasn't sure there was a way back out. Elena didn't speak right away. She didn't move either. She just stood there in the doorway of Nathan's office, arms crossed tightly across her chest like she could somehow keep everything inside from unraveling. Nathan leaned against the doorframe, watching her with eyes that had shifted from polite to something sharper. Not threatening, but alert. "Careful. You need to sit down," he said gently. "I'm fine standing." "You're not going to be," he said. "Not after I tell you the truth." She swallowed. Her throat was dry. "Try me." Nathan walked past her, sat down in the chair in front of the glowing monitors, and spun one of the screens so she could see it fully. 3 months ago, he started, a biotech lab outside of Houston was broken into. Not ransacked. Not vandalized. Just one freezer missing. She blinked. "You tracked me down over a stolen freezer?" "No," he said. "I tracked you down because of what was inside it." He tapped a few keys and pulled up a new file. Medical data, blood work, rows of numbers that meant nothing to Elena. Until he pointed to a line marked VX41A. "This virus," Nathan said, "it's not naturally occurring. It was built, engineered in a lab for a very specific purpose. Rapid spread, high incubation stealth, and fatal, but only to certain genetic profiles." Elena shook her head. "So what? It's a biological weapon?" "Worse," Nathan said. "It's a targeted reset. Whoever created it wanted to thin out the population, based on genetics, health history, even blood type. It's the most selective pathogen we've ever seen." Her heart pounded harder with every word. "So what does that have to do with me?" Nathan turned to her fully. "Because 5 weeks ago, someone walked into a clinic in Boston with symptoms nobody could explain. You treated him." Elena blinked. "A man with seizures and a weird rash?" Nathan nodded. "He was patient 0, VX41A, and he should have died within 48 hours. But he didn't, because you treated him. You kept him alive. I didn't even know what I was treating." "That's the thing," he said, standing up now. "You weren't supposed to survive either. You touched his blood. You were exposed. And nothing happened to you. No fever. No symptoms. Nothing." A pause hung between them. "You're immune, Elena." She took a step back. "That's not possible." "It is. And that's why people are looking for you. That's why your name came up in an intercepted message 3 days ago. They don't want to hurt you, they want to use you." She stared at him. "Use me how?" "Your immunity is the key to the cure," he said. "You are, in every sense of the word, their missing piece. They want your blood, your DNA, and they'll take it, by force if they have to." The walls felt like they were closing in. "I didn't sign up for this," Elena whispered. Nathan's voice dropped. "None of us did." Then he leaned forward, calm but intense. "But if we don't move fast, a lot of people are going to die. And the people behind this? They won't stop with just one city. New Orleans is just the test site." Elena looked down at the files again, at her own face, her own name. And suddenly, the storm outside didn't seem nearly as dangerous as the one that had already started inside her life. Elena didn't sleep the rest of that night. She sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring out the window as the rain returned in fits and starts, tapping lightly against the glass like fingers trying to get her attention. Her mind raced. Questions piled on top of each other like traffic at rush hour. How long had they been watching her? Why her? What if they already knew where she was? When morning came, the world outside looked washed out and suspiciously calm. The air smelled of wet asphalt and magnolia. Nathan was in the kitchen, making coffee like nothing was wrong. "We can't stay here," Elena said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. Nathan glanced up. "I know." She expected resistance. A debate. Some kind of plan where he told her to trust him again. Instead, he handed her a to-go cup. "Get dressed. We'll leave in 10." 10 minutes later, they were back on the road, this time in a different vehicle. Nathan had swapped the sleek SUV for a dusty gray pickup truck that looked like it belonged to a construction worker from Slidell. "Is this even yours?" she asked. "Borrowed," he said with a tight smile. "One of several I keep for emergencies. This counts." He didn't use the GPS, didn't take the main roads. Instead, they weaved through backstreets, industrial zones, and underpasses. Places where cameras were less likely to exist and people didn't ask questions. But even with all that caution, they didn't make it out clean. It happened just past the riverfront. Nathan turned down what looked like an abandoned service road and Elena spotted it first. A black sedan, parked too neatly under an overpass. "Don't slow down," she whispered, gripping the door handle. But it was too late. The moment they passed, the sedan's lights flashed on, and it pulled out fast. Nathan slammed the gas. The truck roared forward, tires squealing on wet pavement. "They're tailing us," Elena said, twisting in her seat to watch. "Just one car." "For now," Nathan muttered, taking a hard left down a narrow alley lined with dumpsters. The sedan followed. "I thought you said this was a safe route." "It was yesterday." He yanked the wheel again, this time into what looked like a closed warehouse lot. "Out," he barked. "What?" "Out of the truck now." They bailed. Nathan pulled her behind a shipping container just seconds before the sedan came screeching in. Two men jumped out, both dressed in black, moving with military precision. Elena's breath caught in her throat. "They're not here to talk," she whispered. "Nope," Nathan said, pulling something from his boot. "A compact handgun." "You carry a weapon?" He looked at her. "I told you." "Security." They ducked through the side entrance of the warehouse just as the men circled the truck. Inside was dark, quiet, filled with shadows and metal crates. "Where are we going?" Elena asked as they ran through the maze of pallets. "Somewhere safe," he said again. But this time, she didn't believe him. Because now, safe felt like a word no longer available in her vocabulary. The warehouse was silent now, except for their breathing. Elena's heart pounded so loud it drowned out everything else. Her back was pressed against a rusted storage rack, her knees aching from crouching too long. Nathan stood beside her, back to the wall, eyes fixed on the dim exit across the room. The men in black hadn't come inside yet. Maybe they were still searching the truck. Maybe they were circling the building. Or maybe they were already inside, watching, waiting. "Nathan," Elena whispered. "Who the hell are those people?" He didn't answer. "Nathan." He finally turned to her, his voice low, quiet, and tired in a way she hadn't heard before. "I used to work for the Department of Defense. Cyber Ops Division." Elena stared at him, stunned. "You're military?" "Was. Then I got recruited into something more specialized. A federal task force tracking illegal bioweapon development. Private sector labs, black market research groups, rogue scientists. Stuff you only read about in leaked reports, if you're lucky." She blinked. "So this whole time, you've been investigating that virus?" He nodded. VX-41A. It started popping up on chatterboards last fall. Someone was testing it, quietly, globally. By the time we found out about the Houston theft, it was already here. "And me?" she asked. "Where do I fit in?" Nathan exhaled slowly, like he hated what he had to say next. "We didn't know who the carrier was. Not at first. But when you treated that patient in Boston and didn't get sick, well, that caught our attention. So you flagged me." We watched you, he admitted. Tracked your movements. Your hospital records. I won't lie, Elena. At first, I thought you might be involved. Her jaw tightened. Because I didn't die? Because people like you don't just survive VX-41A, Nathan said. They're either the result of years of controlled immunity studies, or the product of intentional design. She took a shaky step back. Are you saying someone made me immune? Nathan didn't answer right away. Maybe, he said finally. Or maybe you're just a genetic anomaly. Either way, your blood is the only known factor we can't replicate. Labs tried. They've already run simulated vaccine models. None of them hold. Elena felt her knees weaken. So you were sent to... What? Bring me in. No, he said sharply. I was sent to evaluate. But after watching you, learning who you are, I couldn't just hand you over. She stared at him. I didn't want to trust you, she whispered. I didn't ask you to. They were quiet again. The rain had started outside, faint drops tapping on the warehouse roof like static. Then Elena asked the one thing she hadn't dared yet. Are you protecting me because I'm valuable? Or because you care? Nathan met her eyes. No deflection. No jokes. Both, he said. The door behind them creaked. Nathan's hand went to his sidearm. Elena stepped in front of him without thinking. For the first time in 24 hours, she wasn't sure who was saving who anymore. The creak behind them wasn't loud, but in the silence of that warehouse, it may as well have been a gunshot. Nathan spun around instantly, gun drawn, steady. Elena crouched low behind a stack of crates, heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. Footsteps. 2 of them. Maybe 3. Hard-soled boots on concrete. Careful. Coordinated. Trained. Nathan motioned to Elena without saying a word. Stay low. Stay quiet. She nodded, lips pressed together to keep herself from gasping. One of the men entered the aisle to their left, moving slow, scanning, dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, face covered, rifle in hand. This wasn't some random thug. This was a takedown team. Nathan didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, he grabbed Elena's wrist and led her around the other side of the crates, crouching as they moved. She could feel the adrenaline burning through her skin like electricity. We're not going to outrun them in here, Nathan whispered. Then what? I need to create a diversion. He handed her something small and black. A key fob? Go out the back exit. There's a van 2 blocks east. Silver. This'll unlock it. Get in, get low, don't stop for anyone. What about you? I'll be right behind you. But the way he said it didn't feel like a promise. It felt like a backup plan. Before she could argue, one of the gunmen spotted them. Got visual. A flash of red laser light flickered across the crates as gunfire cracked through the warehouse. Nathan shoved Elena toward the back door. Run. She ran. Bullets sparked off metal. Splinters flew from pallets around her. But somehow, her feet kept moving. She burst through the emergency exit, boots hitting asphalt hard. Her lungs burned, throat dry. The air outside was thick and humid, rain hanging heavy in the air but not yet falling. 2 blocks felt like 10. She spotted the van. Middle of the block. Parked at an angle like someone left in a hurry. She clicked the fob. Lights blinked. The door unlocked. Elena threw herself inside, slammed it shut, dropped below the window line, and waited. Gunfire popped once more in the distance, then went quiet. And for a second, the silence was worse than the sound. Then, the driver's door opened. She flinched. But it was Nathan, covered in sweat, bleeding from his forearm, but alive. Drive, he said, sliding in. And they were gone. The van sped through the outskirts of New Orleans, its tires splashing through puddles as the storm finally broke overhead. Rain slammed against the windshield in sheets. But Nathan didn't slow down. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other clutched around the bleeding cut on his arm. Let me look at that, Elena said, crawling up from the back seat into the passenger side. We don't have time, he muttered through gritted teeth. You'll be no good to anyone if you pass out behind the wheel, she snapped, grabbing the first aid kit from the glove compartment. They pulled off under an overhang behind an old gas station, cloaked in darkness and ivy. Elena cleaned and dressed the wound quickly, her hand surprisingly steady. "This is a clean cut," she said. "You were lucky." Nathan gave a tired half-smile. "I'm starting to think you're my good luck charm." She rolled her eyes. "Don't push it." Back on the road, he finally told her where they were going. North Shore Gen Tech. It's a private research facility about 45 minutes from here. Underground. Off the books. Can we trust them? I set it up myself 6 months ago. If there's any place in the state that can process your blood safely and quickly, it's that lab. Elena stared out the window, watching the trees blur past in the downpour. Her thoughts were spinning. "So you really think something in my blood can help stop this thing?" "I don't think," Nathan said. "I know." He reached into the center console and pulled out a flash drive. "This has the last patient logs, blood panels, antibody sequences, everything we've got. The only thing missing is you." The road narrowed into gravel as they approached a gate hidden by brush. Nathan entered a code into a keypad mounted on a post. The gate opened slowly, groaning on rusted hinges. Beyond it, a concrete structure sat half buried into a hillside, industrial, cold, and humming with quiet power. Inside, the air was sterile, the lights bright and motion-triggered. The lab technicians, already briefed, moved like they were racing against time, which, in truth, they were. As they led Elena toward the testing chamber, Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're about to change everything." She nodded. But inside, she was still wondering if she'd survive what came next. The lab had barely finished analyzing the first vial of Elena's blood when the alarm sounded. Nathan's head snapped up from the observation desk. Red lights began to flash overhead. Motion sensors on the outer perimeter had been tripped. He didn't have to guess who it was. "They found us," he said flatly. Security scrambled to lock down the facility, but it was already too late. Whoever had come wasn't wasting time. Minutes later, the main door slid open, not by force, but by override. And walking through it, like he owned the building, was Dr. Vaughn. Oh! Impeccably dressed in a navy suit and crisp white shirt. His silver hair combed neatly, glasses perfectly set, hands relaxed at his sides. No weapon, no guards, just presence. Nathan's jaw tightened. Elena stared, confused. "You know him?" she asked. Nathan nodded grimly. "He's the architect. VX-41A was his design." Dr. Vaughn smiled faintly, as if he was being introduced at a dinner party. "I prefer the term innovator," he said smoothly. "What do you want?" Nathan stepped in front of Elena. Vaughn raised a brow. "That depends. Is this where we make threats, or can we skip to the negotiation part?" "There's nothing to negotiate," Elena snapped. "You created a virus to wipe people out by genetic profile. You turned human lives into filters." He looked at her with unsettling calm. "I created balance. Our planet is crumbling. Resources are disappearing. Governments are too slow, too political. We need precision. We need correction." "You want genocide with a lab coat," Nathan growled. Vaughn turned his eyes to Elena. "You, on the other hand, you're something else entirely." "I'm not yours to use," she said firmly. "You're not a weapon, Elena," he said softly. "You're a mirror, proof that nature always adapts. That's why you're important. That's why I want you to come with me, willingly. Help shape what comes next." Her voice didn't shake. "I'd rather die than help you." A pause. Long, heavy. Then Vaughn's smile vanished. "Shame," he said. "I was hoping you'd be smarter." Nathan raised his weapon. "Take one more step and I swear." But Vaughn didn't flinch. Instead, he looked past them, toward the security monitors. "You might want to check outside," he said coldly. "I didn't come alone." Outside the lab, the security feed showed 4 black SUVs parked just beyond the tree line. Men in tactical gear were spreading out across the perimeter, silent, strategic, and heavily armed. Inside, the sterile air felt even colder. Nathan kept his gun trained on Vaughn, who didn't blink. The lab tech stood frozen near the monitors, unsure if they were witnessing a hostage situation or the beginning of something far worse. Elena's mind was racing. She looked down at the sealed vial of her blood, her last sample, just processed, glowing faintly in the bioreactive container. The readings confirmed it. Her antibodies neutralized VX-41A on contact. Her immunity was real and replicable. But Vaughn was right about one thing. He didn't need to hurt her. He just needed what was inside her. "Give me the vial," Vaughn said calmly, eyes on Elena. "Let me finish what I started. You'll save the planet. Selectively, yes, but it'll survive." She stared at him, then turned to Nathan. "Is this it?" she whispered. "Is this the only vial?" Nathan nodded. "The others are still processing. This is the first complete batch." Elena's fingers tightened around the container. If she gave it to Vaughn, he'd use it to protect the few, while eliminating the many. If she destroyed it, the formula would be lost. Maybe forever. She could feel every pair of eyes in the room locked on her. Her chest rose and fell like waves in a hurricane. Then she made a choice. Elena stepped toward one of the techs and reached for a syringe. "What are you doing?" Nathan asked. Her hands didn't tremble. She drew a dose directly from the vial and turned to the patient in isolation, the test subject who'd been exposed to VX-41A hours earlier. He was fading fast, unconscious, fevered, and slipping further by the minute. "I'm not giving this to Vaughn," Elena said. "I'm giving it to him." She injected the serum into the patient's foreline. For a moment, silence. Then the monitor beeps began to level out. Heart rate stabilizing. Oxygen climbing. Fever breaking. The room erupted with gasps. "It's working," one of the techs whispered. Vaughn's face hardened. "You have no idea what you've just done." "Oh, I know," Elena said, turning to face him. "I just proved the cure doesn't belong to you." And behind her, the world started healing. One life at a time. It took 48 hours for the cure to go global. Once the first patient recovered, the race to replicate Elena's antibodies began at full speed. Every secure facility from Atlanta to Geneva was on high alert. Within a week, trials had begun in 3 countries. Within 2, the death toll was slowing, for the first time since the virus was released. But Elena stayed out of the spotlight. She didn't want her face on a screen. Didn't want interviews or honors or speeches. She just wanted to breathe again. To rest. She and Nathan moved into a quiet cottage an hour outside Baton Rouge, surrounded by pine trees and quiet mornings. No cameras. No chatter. No pretending that life was simple. But finally, a chance to heal. Nathan had left his old job behind. Burned that bridge willingly. He said he'd spent enough time chasing ghosts. Now he just wanted to protect what mattered. Sometimes they didn't talk for hours. And sometimes they laughed over coffee like nothing had ever happened. But there were nights when Elena would wake up at 2 a.m., drenched in sweat, thinking she was back in that warehouse, running. Nathan never said anything when it happened. He'd just hold her hand until she fell asleep again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line and the cicadas began their nightly song, Nathan turned to her and asked, "Do you ever regret it?" Elena thought for a moment. "No," she said. "I was scared, but I trusted the right person. And because of that, I survived." They survived. He looked at her, something warm in his eyes. "We survived." She smiled. "Not the kind you wear for other people. The kind that only comes when you finally know you're safe." Sometimes, the most ordinary moments turn into the beginnings of extraordinary stories. Elena didn't set out to be a hero. She didn't plan to carry the cure to a global crisis in her bloodstream. All she wanted was a fresh start, a quiet job, a simple life. But the universe rarely asks for permission when it chooses someone. And when everything around her collapsed, when trust felt dangerous and every step forward meant risking something more, she still made the choice to care. That's what saved lives. Not the lab, not the tech, not the weapons, but compassion, bravery, and a willingness to stand for something greater than fear. The lesson? Sometimes, doing the right thing feels terrifying. Sometimes, trusting someone new feels like the biggest gamble of your life. But in a world where so many people build walls, choosing to reach across, even once, can change everything. You don't have to be immune to a virus to make an impact. You don't need government clearance or secret skills. All it takes is one moment, one act of courage, one choice to protect what matters, to shift the future. And if this story moved something in you, maybe it's because deep down, you're capable of more than you think. So here's your call to action. If you've ever been helped by a stranger, or helped someone just because you could, share it. In the comments. Out loud. With someone who needs to believe good still exists. Because it does. In small diners. In locked labs. In back alleys. In broken hearts. And maybe, just maybe, right now in you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, trust doesn't start when it's safe. Trust starts when it's necessary. And love begins when fear steps aside.